All right, we're diving into a really provocative, fictional analysis today. It poses a pretty chilling question. What if the fall of a global empire wasn't some kind of accident, but was actually a planned demolition? Okay, so this is the core idea we're going to be digging into. The whole analysis just kicks off with this wild premise, right? It asks us to imagine a world where the end of a superpower isn't some slow, inevitable decay, but a deliberate, totally controlled event. So the source material speculates that when faced with a decline they just can't reverse, a group of global elites might actually trigger a collapse. And get this, the goal wouldn't be to save the empire, not at all. It would be to save themselves and their assets by pulling off one last, absolutely massive transfer of wealth. So you're probably wondering, how could something like that even be possible? Well, to get our heads around it, we first have to look at the system itself. The analysis we're looking at calls it the four-pillar system of American power. The way this analysis lays it out, it's basically a self-reinforcing loop. It all starts with military power, which secures global markets. That then enables financial power, think things like the petrodollar system, to extract wealth from all over. That wealth, in turn, funds a dominant tech sector that pulls in the world's best and brightest. And then, the final piece of the puzzle, cultural power. It just wraps it all together, making the whole system seem, natural, even desirable to everyone else. And when you look at it this way, you can see just how perfectly interlocked this whole machine is supposed to be. Take financial power, for instance. It extracts wealth, you can think of it as a kind of global tax from the petrodollar system, and then it directly feeds that money right back into funding the military and all the R&D that keeps the tech advantage going. It's a completely closed loop. Pretty genius in a way. But, like any machine, this one has a breaking point. And according to this analysis, there's a very specific hypothetical event that could just shatter this entire cycle. So the catalyst is this fictional war, Operation Epic Fury. It's framed as the trigger for the entire collapse. And it's important to see that it's more than just a military conflict. It's a direct shot at the system's biggest vulnerability. It's control over global energy. And this is where we see the core economic attack unfold. In this hypothetical scenario, Iran starts demanding Chinese yuan for any ship passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, that one move strikes right at the heart of the financial pillar. All of a sudden, you've got the first real, viable alternative to the petrodollar. It forces the whole world to start asking, hey, why do we need to hold all our reserves in US dollars anymore? So as the system starts to fracture, the pillars begin to crumble. But in reverse, the financial decline means there's way less money for tech and research. And this leads to what the analysis calls a catastrophic brain drain. It even cites this hypothetical 2025 survey showing that a whopping 75% of US-based scientists are thinking about leaving the country. I mean, the talent that once flocked to the empire is now running for the exits. Okay, so the empire is failing, right? The system is breaking down. But why on earth would anyone resort to the most extreme option imaginable? Well, according to this theory, the chilling answer lies in the very nature of modern capital itself. The source material brings up this really interesting concept it calls nomadic capital to explain the motive. And here's the best way to think about it. This kind of capital has no loyalty to any nation. It isn't American. It just happens to be in America. It used the US system like a vehicle, a tool for making a profit. But now that the vehicle is breaking down, its goal isn't to fix it. Nope, it's just strip it for parts and find a new ride. And this is where it gets really dark. According to this hypothesis, using a tactical nuke isn't about winning the war in the way we usually think about it. It's about creating a very specific kind of chaos. It's meant to be a terrifying show of resolve, a way to create a permanent pollution trap that seals enemy bunkers for good, and a psychological shockwave to force a quick surrender. The analysis then lays out the cold, hard, tactical argument for why they do this. So, for hardened tunnels, a normal bunker buster just causes some local damage. But a nuclear penetrator? It doesn't just collapse the structure, it creates a permanent radioactive dead zone, sealing it off forever. It literally turns radiation into a natural barrier to stop enemy movement. It's a brutally effective tool if you're looking at it from that purely tactical, chilling perspective. And this is the crazy part. The entire horrific act hinges on one single calculated bet that no other nuclear power would risk, mutual assured destruction just to retaliate for a non-ally. And this creates this terrifying pause in global politics. what the analysis calls a terror equilibrium. And it's in that pause that a window of opportunity opens for the real endgame. So that terror equilibrium, it's not the goal itself. It's the perfect cover, the perfect distraction for the real goal, cashing out of America in one massive final escape. Think about it. While the entire world is just frozen in horror and shock, the analysis predicts something it calls the sell America trade. This whole manufactured crisis becomes the perfect excuse for that nomadic capital to pull trillions, literally trillions of dollars out of the U.S. economy. The global panic, the diplomatic chaos, it's all just the perfect distraction for what could be the largest asset seizure in history. And what's left behind after all that? Well, according to this analysis, it's just an empty shell. A nation that's been stripped of its best talent, its innovation, and all its capital. All that's left is an impossible mountain of debt, reducing the country to basically just a resource export economy. And this really brings us to the ultimate, brutal takeaway from the source material. The final price for this controlled demolition is paid entirely by the citizens who are left behind. They're the ones who get the debt, the radioactive fallout, and the failed state, all while the architects of the collapse have already moved their wealth on to the next global hub. So we're left with this really unsettling question, aren't we? It just challenges us to think about the true nature of power, about the loyalty or lack thereof of capital, and what really happens to a nation when the very system that built it is no longer profitable for the people at the top. It's a fictional scenario, of course, but man, it's one that forces you to see the world in a very different and maybe a much darker light.